Okay, start the recording. As many of you guys are aware, we have a large group online tonight, and we also have a group in the co-working space down at 23rd and Irving, formerly known as Merritt Methodist Church. Really excited to have that co-working space available for us tonight. For anyone in the co-working space, want to remind folks to be sure to allow whoever's sitting nearest to the computer to repeat the question or repeat the statement. We do have, typically 30 to 40 folks watching the recording of this. So even if there's only, 6 or 8 people online this evening, we do have a lot of folks that typically watch this afterwards. So we always like to be inclusive of them as well. So it looks like I don't need to remind you guys to mute for Zoom. So thank you. Everyone's veterans at this by now. So appreciate that. Tom, would you like to take it away?
Yes, our first order of business tonight is our community resource officer, Kaylin Campbell, and she is on Zoom here, or her name is printed there, so I'm sure she's on the other end of it. If you could take over.
Hello, I'm not sure if it's working. Am I there?
It's great.
Yes.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. Sorry I can't be there in person tonight, but I'm excited to be here virtually. So we can go over, it looks like you have Sloan Lake's stats first. So overall, everything looked really good. Looks like crim miss went down from 5 reported cases to 4. Let's see, larceny, which is basically theft, went from 6 reported to 4. Theft from motor vehicle stayed about the same, 8 and 8 reported cases. And then motor vehicle theft went from 2 to 5. So a slight increase there. We can head on over to West Colfax now. So for West Colfax,
could you talk about the car thefts, because there's not that many that are in Sloan's Lake, but it seems like it jumps up in West Colfax area.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me get through the West Colfax stats, since like you said, it does increase a little bit. And then we'll talk about that. So crim miss on West Colfax, which again is just damaged property, went from 14 to 20. So a slight increase there. Larceny went from 15 to 16, so about the same. The theft from motor vehicle we did see an improvement, 33 reported to 19. And then motor vehicle theft, it actually decreased. It went from 29 reported cases to 15. So what we're doing is we are actually partnering with Advanced Auto Parts on April 22nd. There's going to be another steering wheel club giveaway. It's going to be at 4545 West Colfax Avenue. From 11 to 1. So I recommend showing up early just to make sure you can get a club if you're needing one. And I can write all this information in the chat also. Oh yes, that's from our event. So yep, these steering wheel clubs, they don't completely prevent the theft of motor vehicles, but they do make it a little bit harder and kind of we call it target hardening. So that way, if someone comes by a car thief, they see a motor vehicle club in there, they're less likely to take your vehicle. So it's really a good deterrent. Also on the 22nd, it's National Drug Take Back Day. So any unused prescription medication, you can take it to the District 1 station and we can dispose of that correctly to make sure it doesn't fall into the wrong hands. So that's going to be all day. Usually it runs from about 10 to 4, but you can just bring it to the District 1 station, 1311 West 46th Avenue. And like I said, it's just in that main clerk's desk. You can bring any kind of medication. And then we also have our monthly CAG. It's going to be our Citizens Advisory Group meeting. That's going to be this upcoming Wednesday, the 19th at 6 o'clock. We're going to have our District 1 Homeless Outreach Team speaking as our guest speaker. So if you have any questions related to homelessness, what we can and can't do, kind of the overall process, you can either join us virtually or in person, and we would love to have everyone there. And then are there any more specific questions about motor vehicle theft that you had?
Yeah. Do you have any mapping that the force does of those statistics? Like, so do you have a map of where those thefts occur?
There is a map, yes.
Okay. where do most of those thefts occur? Like in Sloan's Lake, for instance, in our area, are they mostly along Sheridan, or are they in neighborhoods, and are they on main thoroughfares, or are they on side streets?
You know, I'm not sure at this moment. In the future, I can try to include those maps in there, but there are also, you can look it up online. We have a virtual crime dashboard. I can send you the link for that again, or it looks like you might have it. Yep, right there. So that'll show you more of the specifics about what areas those are occurring in. And I can look into getting stats, like the maps in there for the future. So you guys have that for reference.
And their Merit House co-works on that.
Officer Campbell, I know we emailed with you all about this, but just as a refresher, I know a lot of us were alarmed when we saw that there was a stabbing reported at 26 and Newton, and you all shared with us that that had taken place somewhere else, but that's where the crime was reported, or that's where the person came back to?
Yeah, absolutely. So the crime, it actually took place somewhere else, but that's where the victim lived. So he went back there, and that's where it was reported and called in. But again, the victim wasn't very cooperative with us. I think they were able to locate a scene, but it wasn't in Sloan's Lake. So unfortunately, that did occur. But again, it didn't happen in Sloan's Lake. It's just where he lived. So that's where he called into the police. So
Thank you.
Yeah.
Question on that note, is it possible that some of these car thefts happen or other crimes happen elsewhere and the individuals happen to live in Sloan's Lake and just report those from their home address?
I mean, that's absolutely a possibility. It depends on how they're reporting it. So you can report some of these crimes online. So with that, if you put just your home address as the general address, yeah, it would show up as a statistic for Sloan's Lake or West Colfax. But generally, if they call in to have an officer respond or do a telephone report, they would ask where the vehicle or where the incident occurred, and that's where it would generate that stat from. So in general, that's pretty accurate about it, but there might be a few outliers.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Alan, can you jump back to the poster for the March 17th event? Yeah. Well, Sloan's Lake Citizens Group was one of the sponsors for this from our fund. It's not contingency fund. What is it? Special fund. We had some extra money and we donated $1,000 to that, which allowed the police to get 64 additional of the steering wheel clubs. And there's a picture of some of the clubs. And there I am standing next to Police Chief Ron Thomas, who was thanking us for being part of the event. There were over 100 cars that went through and got the etching on their catalytic converter. And you could also sign up for the anti-theft tracking app that if you have GPS in your car, that you can call and say my car is stolen, and they will have the information to turn that on, and they can track the car, as they don't want you to do chasing after it. Correct?
Absolutely. Sloan's Lake was amazing and gave us such a generous donation. And that event was such a huge success. It went over so great with the citizens that we're really trying to partner with Emily Griffith again and get another event going sometime in the summer. So stay tuned for that. But it was a huge success and we owe it to you guys. So thank you.
Any other questions online for Officer Campbell?
Well, just about the hit and run on Federal.
Which one?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I've brought this up now a couple times at meetings about the speed on Federal and Sheridan Boulevard, and I feel like I get brushed off when I bring this up, but you know, this happened 3 weeks ago.
Okay. I'm sorry, not sure who I'm speaking with, but I
Well,
think
it's
we've
fine,
addressed
sorry.
this, and I think I asked you to send me an email. I can definitely look up more
Yeah.
information and I can send it out to the group as well about this. Is there a specific one that you're wanting to know about?
Well, well, there's a hit and run on federal, and I think, and it's not you in particular, but I have sent you an email about this. But just a larger conversation about the speed on Federal and Sheridan Boulevard and what, what can be done about, people racing between lights. And, nothing personal, but I'm just trying to, I keep raising this as a issue. And I don't know who to bring that up with.
Absolutely.
This is Keith.
Oh, hi. Yeah, absolutely. If you can send me an email directly, I'll put my email address in the link, and then I can try and push it over to Dottie, Director, Department of Transportation and Infrastructure, and see if we can get you some answers and see if we can figure this out.
Thank you.
And
welcome.
Keith, the other thing I would add is a lot of the challenges we've had with Sheridan, Colfax, and Federal is they are ultimately CDOT roads. And even though Dottie does have ambitions of having some road diets and making those roads safer, ultimately they are managed by CDOT, and a lot of the resistance we've got for safety improvements is coming from CDOT wanting to keep them as fast, high volume roads. So that would be another place I'd encourage you to reach out to in parallel.
Hey guys, this is Dave Burton. On the federal BID, and I know that federal is going to get more medians all the way from, I think, from 6th Avenue all the way up to 52nd. So they're supposed to be putting a median in the whole entire way, like a raised median. So I think that should slow things down a little bit more.
Yeah, I hadn't heard of that, but I'm really excited, and I hope that does slow everyone down. I would love to learn more info, so I'll look into that.
Yep. Hey, I have a question. Are there any cop shops in the immediate neighborhood?
There is a cop shop on 1490 Zenobia in the Weston Flats. That's the closest cop shop, so the West Colfax area.
Okay, thank you.
There used to be one at the Del Norte Apartments, but they had trouble getting it staffed.
Yeah, they're all volunteer run, so unfortunately, but our West Colfax one is very strong. So, and we have great volunteers in there, so they're really good at helping and like finding answers if you can't get a police response.
Great. Well, that's about all the time that we have tonight for Officer Campbell, since we have such a packed agenda. But thank you so much for joining us, Officer Campbell. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll put my info in the link. Send me an email if you have any questions.
Keith, their email address is in the newsletter. Okay, there's nobody from Amanda Sandoval District 1, Council District 1 was available tonight, but she wanted us to be aware of currently there's Senate Bill 23-213 that the state is wanting to override local zoning ordinances. And so I'll just read the news flash from Amanda Sandoval's office. Governor Polis has proposed a new statewide land use bill that, if passed, will override local zoning authority in Denver and cities across Colorado. Senate Bill 23-213 would take away Denver's ability to determine what type of housing can be built on lots currently zoned for single unit housing. ADUs, accessory dwelling units, would be allowed on all single family lots, and their maximum size being the greater of 800 square feet or up to half the size of the primary house. She said it's a complex bill that probably has some unknown complications that they haven't thought out, but she would like for anybody who's interested to contact our state representative and our state senator. So the state senator is Julie Gonzalez and the state rep is Serena Gonzalez Gutierrez. For a short while, she is going to be council person at large.
Can you come in here?
Oh, she'll have a thing on a little later in the agenda. She can hop on that.
We talk later about it?
Tom, could you
Yeah.
repeat the question? We can't hear over here.
Oh, yeah, wait a minute, I'm lost track of where I am,
Sorry.
but here it is. Amy Slavis from Council District 3 can talk to us about that, and she will be making her presentation right now, actually.
Yeah. It's not gonna be a presentation.
Okay, well, you want to hop over here so you're on
Wait,
camera.
yes. But definitely answer some questions. Thank you, Ian. Of course.
Big move fast, watch out.
Hey, everyone. So Governor Polis and some state lawmakers are pushing through 23213. It's a state land use bill. So how land use and zoning works, it really is a municipality's purview. So anytime a zoning changes, as you know, it kind of goes through city council to make sure we're both creating density as well as trying to prevent displacement. So Governor Polis has pushed through this bill to try to increase housing and basically take away zoning restrictions that currently are in the purview of municipalities. So the idea behind what he wants to do is just create more housing, period. And the idea is that supply and demand, it will help our housing crisis across the state. So the problem with that is that certain things that he's pushing could potentially lead to gentrification and displacement. So for example, in the bill, you can do blanket ADUs, which we love ADUs. However, there's no provisions that say it has to be owner occupied, which is currently in the Denver zoning code. So you can Airbnb it. There's no restrictions on size, so you can make it really large. So there's no really restrictions, and that is kind of problematic in our viewpoint. It also allows for any single family zoning to do triplexes and duplexes without any restrictions. So you could literally kind of knock down a single family home and build up a triplex or a duplex. So it's kind of like a blanket top-down approach. We do need to address affordable housing. It is a 100-page bill. Council President Torres and Council Pro Tem Sandoval are sending out kind of communication about their stance on it. Essentially, we really have to work with municipalities, because another problem is Aspen and Denver are very different, right? So it's a kind of across the board. So a lot of cities are opposing it. Mayor Hancock and City Council did come up together to jointly oppose as well. So it's definitely something to be paying attention to make sure, and the hope is municipalities will come to the table and be used as stakeholders to really try to make amendments to the bill and make it more equitable and make sure it's not just a one-size-fits-all zoning that just is kind of pro-development without provisions for affordable housing. The last big thing that we're a little concerned about is all the work we've done on the West Area Plan, all the work we did on the small area plans throughout Sunnyside, the Santa Fe overlay, the expanding housing affordability bill that we passed to make sure at least a percentage of new development over 10 units has some affordable housing. It might override all of that, like years of work to kind of make sure Denver keeps growing in an equitable way, preventing displacement. So that's kind of the short, succinct.
But, you know, we're District 3 and District 1 weren't our areas had a blanket overlay to allow ADUs.
Correct.
And it's currently
Well,
that way,
yes.
and almost all of 1, and I think, have they picked up all those little corners of 3?
Almost.
Okay.
We still have to do Westwood, so Barnum, Villa Park, all got, and Barnum West all got Mass, and then Sandoval's been, Council Pro Tem Sandoval's been working really hard to make sure all of District 1 is as well. But even though it has blanket ADU zonings or even community planning development in the city, is very pro ADU. It's a way to build equity, keep folks, families together, used, to have, parents live there also for rent. There are stipulations in the ADU code to still prevent displacement. So for example, if you have an ADU, it has to be owner occupied. There has to be an owner in the main house if you're renting out the other house, as opposed to just being able to Airbnb it. You have to have a certain lot size to make sure that we're not putting too much pressure on our water, sewage, parking. This bill, the state bill, has no restrictions for parking. So it's just kind of it's a little bit of a.
It's a broad wand.
Yeah. So it needs a lot of work.
Are we going to discuss 213 tonight, or is this the right time for that? Are we going to largely discuss the bill tonight, or is this
Well,
kind of the right time?
this was just bringing to attention that, now is the time to talk to your representatives and say,
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's,
So-
you can make a stance for sure.
because Sloan's Lake Citizens Group went through a number of years ago to the Witter Coalville Historic District and downzoned most of it to single family because it had a blanket duplex. And that has really helped keep the pressure off of the contributing structures. You can't do much with. I mean, the building we're in right now is a contributing structure in the district. But the non-contributing structures, that if it's a single family, they can only replace it with a single family. And that has helped keep the pressure off of changing the historic district visually.
Right, yeah.
And we circulated a lot of petitions, and I took stacks of paper in, and city council passed it.
Yeah.
I could have been blown over.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, I'm happy to answer any questions you have now. Also, I can put in the chat our newsletter if you'd like to sign up for that. To kind of just be more aware of it. We're putting out Colorado Municipal League has definitely made a stance. They have some helpful, more information, just kind of breaking down the bill. It's a beast of a bill. It's over 100 pages. We definitely need to address the housing crisis. But I think we just differ.
There's other
Yes.
ways.
Yeah. So I can, you have the link? I can sign on and get the link for our newsletter.
Oh, yeah,
District 3.
I get the newsletter so I can forward it to our website.
Yeah, okay, or I'll put it in the
Or
chat. You
Facebook
can
or
sign up
whatever.
on email, and so it gets directly to your email.
We did have a question from the chat from Stevie. Are there cities that support Polis's position? If so, which ones?
Yes, there are. Off the top of my head, I'm not sure the exact cities. I don't want to misspeak, but there are cities that have supported it, that do agree with that method.
I do know the mayor of Boulder did come out in support of it.
Yeah, there is. So far, I believe Broomfield was not for it. I believe Steamboat, Breckenridge, Denver now. So it really depends on the city.
So just a few things anecdotally. I was at the committee hearing where this was introduced, and they asked for testimony from individuals. And over the course of 10 hours, about every municipality in Colorado testified against this. And every homeless advocacy group, individual, builder, virtually everyone that's not a municipality having their power removed is in favor of this bill. And local elected officials that I've talked to are being stripped of their power to do certain zoning things. But I feel like they just released a laundry list of amendments that are knocking down a lot of the sharp edges on this bill. And I will say that some of the displacement and things like that are very likely to be addressed very rapidly, because Senator Julie Gonzalez is very concerned about the displacement part of this. But one thing that resonated a lot with the groups that I'm part of is local elected officials have had their opportunity to try and correct this, and it wouldn't go to the state level if they had done a good job with it. when I was there, I grew up in Greenwood Village. Greenwood Village testified that they built all the housing that they will ever need 30 years ago. Cherry Hills Village came out and said there will never be affordable housing in Cherry Hills Village. So I think there's a lot of nuance. You know, I've worked a lot with Councilwoman in Sandoval. She's very good with zoning overlays. The historic designations, things like that are still within council people's purview. You know, building, the original bill said up to 6 plexes would be allowed pretty much everywhere. They're knocking that down, but those houses have to fit conforming guidelines for your area. So you can't just, you know, build an apartment complex everywhere. Like for single family historic buildings, you would still need to fit those within like a Denver Square or something like that. You don't just magically get tons and tons of variances.
No, it would be, so single family homes would be able to do duplexes and triplexes.
Yeah. So, yeah, I just say, look into it a little bit.
Yeah, I think it says something that this bill was introduced a week ago, and we're halfway through the session as well, that they are trying to rush this bill through and trying to get it through without a whole lot of feedback from a lot of different groups that have a lot of say in this stuff. And I, you know, with all due respect to, you know, all the groups that you've listed, you know, including or the homeless advocates and, you know, the building groups and all that, you know, this is definitely a rushed bill for a reason. And I think that the more people that are speaking out on this is probably a good thing.
And there are, you know, it is complex and there are nuances and there are things in the bill that are good. For example, building out more density around transit areas, right? Because we need more affordable housing around transit areas. It helps folks that may not have access to a car, helps for environmental reasons as well. So it's not a blanket, just like from the top down approach for a blanket kind of rezoning is not the greatest, but it's not blanket bad at all. So what I think municipalities that are opposing it are hoping for is coming to the table with more amendments, really kind of looking at all the different complex issues each individual city and county across Colorado may be, you know, experiencing, and see how we can kind of make that work. Also, another couple bills that you might want to pay attention to is there's a rent stabilization bill that's coming down the line, and we kind of listed this in our newsletter. That's something to pay attention to as well, and more funding as well. So there's a couple bills that do address displacement and affordable housing as well. Kind of looking closely if the governor will support those. Yeah.
Any other questions? Or anything in the chat, Alan?
We had some comments from Jennifer Q saying the governor is a smart guy for his efforts. We had a thank you coming from Joseph, but no other questions.
All right, well.
Okay,
thank you for attending our meeting and our brand new digs.
I know. Congrats on your new digs, y'all.
It's, you know, and the church part is over 100 years old. And then this was the 1950s Sunday school wing that we're in now.
So, yeah, you can tell with them, which is good.
But it didn't have the nice glass wall.
Right, that's new. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's see, the next. Keith Meyer, presentation on Denver INC, Inter-Neighborhood Cooperation.
Sure.
Hop on down. I warmed the seat for you.
Hi, everybody. I don't have much of a presentation. I just told Tom I talked about what Inc. was up to. Last weekend, we had a really great presentation in Globeville, Larry Swansea at the Holy Transfiguration Church. We had about 25 people there in person, and then we had another 25 people online. So we had about 50 people total. We have presentations from, I'm trying to think of all the folks, Moms Clean Air Force, Cultivando, which is a new nonprofit that's working on air pollution issues in Globeville, Larry Swansea. Joel Miner spoke from the Colorado Department of Public Health, And we also had Robert, I believe his last name is Burris, from the Denver Department of Public Health. And they all spoke about air pollution, especially as it's affecting Globeville area Swansea, and mostly air pollution from Suncor, and then the Purina plant. There's a rendering factory. There are so many facilities up in the Globeville area Swansea area that I didn't even know about. They showed a map of all the factories that had been placed up there over the last 60 years. And it was pretty depressing, actually. So the Cultivando is actually a small local nonprofit that has started doing some air data research, and they put around air filters and air monitors. And they've also attached, oh, I'm sorry, there was another presentation from CU Denver that have they've handed out these really amazing kind of air tags that people can attach to their bodies or their purses or anything that will monitor the air around their person. And so they've been monitoring all these carcinogens that have been coming from Suncor and all these other places. And the spikes are just, I mean, we're going to try to have them present again. The spikes are pretty unbelievable in terms of monitoring between the air quality around the Globeville area, Swansea area, and places like Broomfield.
Right, Broomfield was the baseline, which was very flat.
Yeah, it was like this. And
The other ones,
Globeville area, Swansea was all over, and it's like benzene, and I mean all the bad ones. So there was really some really good research that's going on, and they're sponsoring a bill, I think, at the State House to increase air monitoring, and then trying to do some air quality efforts up there, which is really great. So that was our meeting on Saturday. We're going to have another meeting coming up tomorrow, actually, the Climate and Sustainability Committee, and I can try to put a link in the chat or send that out to Tom, and he can get it out to everybody. We're going to discuss this initiative that's been started by a bunch of volunteers around Denver called what is it called? Healthy, Thriving, Resilient, Climate Resilient Denver, which is basically an initiative that kind of outlines all the policies and platforms that Denver has come up with over the last 10 years that have not been fulfilled during the current administration, and trying to ask the new elected officials that are coming in to kind of, own up to and live up to these platforms that have been put out and these reports that have been put out by the city. So that's going to be tomorrow night, and the Climate and Sustainability Committee. And then just the last thing is that in May, Sloan's Lake Citizen Group, Highlands, United Neighbors, Sunnyside, Harkness Heights are all going to co-host an event that Inc. is doing at the Elks Club. Everyone is welcome to come. It's going to be on strategies and successes for increasing diversity within neighborhood organizations and increasing membership as well. And we're going to talk about.
that's the regular monthly meeting.
That's our regular monthly meeting on May 13th. And Tom will send some stuff out about that as well, but everybody's welcome to come.
Do you record the meetings?
We do, they're online, they're on YouTube.
I got the link and I'll forward it.
Thank you.
Yeah. we
So
can
they're
send
on
those out.
YouTube.
Yep, they're on YouTube. In fact, I
Inc.
believe,
has its own channel.
I know, I didn't
that-
even realize that either. No, I know. So it does have its own
to
channel,
know.
and all our meetings are up on YouTube, and you can watch at your leisure
Nice,
with a nice cup of coffee.
excellent.
Great, is that it? Is there any questions?
Well, I just wanted to let everybody know Keith is the new president of INC.
Yeah, 2 years. We'll see how it
Yay.
goes. My last, see you.
You're stuck.
Okay. The next in line is John Hershey with Rocky Mountain Communities, the redevelopment of properties at 17th and Hooker. And Alan, we've got slide 10. You could throw that up. Somewhere.
Intersection.
17.
Oh, Hooker. There, that's the existing property. Okay.
There she is. Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent, great. Well, thank you very much for having me and Chris Furlong. Chris is actually with Rocky Mountain Communities. I just pretend to be on TV. I'm with Starboard Realty Group, and Rocky Mountain Communities hired Starboard to work through this rezoning with them and with groups like you. Chris and I are here to discuss our proposal for rezoning the property that you just saw a quick slide of, with the intention of eventually redeveloping. But I want to be clear that this is a discussion only about rezoning. Chris may offer some points about what a redevelopment may look like, but what we're here right now just discussing what the rezoning would be, and what the application would state. So I guess offhand, I'll assume that folks know where Townview is, unless you tell me otherwise. It's at 17th and Hooker, 17th and Grove, essentially, just a couple blocks in from Federal, a couple blocks west of Federal. As that slide demonstrated, Townview is a walk-up, garden-style affordable housing property, consistent with what Rocky Mountain Communities is all about. They're an affordable housing developer. And RMC expects that rezoning this property from, I do have it up here. Can I share my screen, or am I blocked?
Yes, you can.
I can, okay. Well, we may as well poke around a little bit. Let's see, are we looking at a zoning map?
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the site. You see it was part of the site. It's 3 blocks. It's from the west. It's west of Hooker. It's the entire block between Hooker and Grove, and then it's east of Grove. Earlier, years ago, Rocky Mountain Communities rezoned the Grove Street parcel. Now we are discussing rezoning both the larger, older Chapter 59 zoning, the R2A, as well as Rocky Mountain Communities parcel west of Hooker, which is now, if I zoom around long enough, I'll figure out, GMU3. We propose to rezone it to GRX5, which would, I was just looking at this. This isn't exactly what it would look like, of course, but this is shopfront, but this is the kind of general zoning that a GRX5 would allow up to 5 stories. It would require commercial or services on the ground floor, and then would require residential above. It's different from GMX5, which would also perhaps allow for commercial on the upper floors. GRX5 allows for only residential on the upper floors. So we're here basically introducing you to the rezoning effort and asking for your support at the end of the day, if you support what we're discussing. Chris, do you want to say anything about the project itself, or what Townview means to Rocky Mountain Communities and what a rezoning would mean for it?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, John. I'm going to share my screen also and show you guys just a little conceptual plan of the site. This is a little dated. We haven't updated it for most recent iteration, but it does give you a general sense. I can pull it up here. All right, does everybody see that now?
Yes.
Great. All right. So, and I should back up for a second. So, Rocky Mountain Communities is a 30-year-old affordable housing development organization. We're based here in Denver. Most of our properties in the metro area. We have stuff as far as Grand Junction, south to the Springs, north up to Greeley as well. We do operate in both rural and urban markets, but most of our work and most of our properties are in the Denver metro area, including this one, Townview. Down the street, we did a Arroyo Village redevelopment about 5 years ago that is in the similar neighborhood, and some of you may be familiar with that. But in this case, this map, or this this concept shows a drawing from, I think it's about a year ago that we had, and essentially this is an overlay of the existing site, showing the various parcels and sort of what the buildings could look like. In broad strokes, there is a parcel that's already been rezoned, as John mentioned, that will be townhomes or condominiums most likely. And then the other 2 parcels, and that's the one on the far right, parcel E, and then parcels A, B, C, D, as they're labeled here, are multifamily properties that would be affordable housing as well, but apartments as opposed to townhomes. And the parcel A on the far left side is actually going to be, as we have it now, we're considering doing supportive housing, which is similar plan to what Arroyo Village was. It's serving folks who, it's really for the homeless population at 30% of the area median income and below. So that's the lowest that that housing is built for. And then the middle parcel, the big block, you can see there in the square is it would be a range of area median incomes, as high as 80 and as low as 30, as we've sort of looked at it right now. But for us, Townview is like a lot of properties in our portfolio, 40 years old or older, and in need of redevelopment. To keep folks housed, to keep affordable housing in the neighborhood, it's very important for us that we redevelop our properties when they need it, or do rehabs when they need it. And this is a site that has additional density we can put on it. It has additional, we can essentially increase the number of units here, provide more affordable housing in the neighborhood, and that is our mission. So that is why we have come in for rezoning and why we're looking for your support. And both John and I are happy to answer any questions and see if we can give you more information about the property.
John, this is Tom Brown, and the pictures, the diagrams that you showed are from the Denver zoning ordinance, and this shows types of things. That's who created the pictures, was the Denver zoning, correct?
That's correct. I was showing you the Denver zoning code, and the images there are only from the Denver zoning code. I don't want anyone to get the impression that Rocky Mountain Communities is proposing something like that. I just wanted it to be an example of what GRX5 eventually could turn into.
Right. Well, I'm familiar with the zoning as a retired architect, but a lot of people weren't, so I thought we should clarify that.
Thank you.
Because otherwise, you had somebody spend a lot of time drawing pictures.
We do have a question for you all in chat from Jennifer, wondering if it is still all affordable housing under this proposal.
Yes, yeah, our Rocky Mountain Communities only does affordable housing, and yes, we would continue to have this site be entirely affordable housing.
So a couple of questions for you with those plans. I noticed in what you had on the screen for building A, I think you had 50 units that you said were for people making 30% of area median income and below. And then I saw that there were 30 parking spaces for that building. Do people making 30% of area median income frequently have cars?
So I guess, not to go into details too much of this, that the rendering we had, what I showed you guys is actually, like I said, it's about a year old and we have not updated it since. The two different parcels are actually switched on the map, which is a little confusing. But initially we had thought about doing a supportive housing, which is the 30 units you're talking about, first on the rezone parcel. In fact, we're going to do townhomes there first and then do the supportive housing, the other parcel. However, so that building, the one that is currently shown on the concept drawing, I think it shows 90 units and 50 cars. There's that is the last thing we're going to be developing. We have masked it, or not even masked it. We have put it on paper in the sense of seeing if we have enough space, for the property or for that specific parcel, and seeing what we can do in terms of parking. I will say, and that's going to change significantly down the line. The answer is some people do have cars, most do not. You're correct. So it really just, at this point, not knowing exactly what's going to happen there, it's better to plan for various alternatives. If that were to turn into a traditional, affordable housing property, as is shown in the other couple parcels, the other ratios are 175 units, 115 cars, 90 units, 75 cars, 80 units, 50 cars. so this one's also shown as 90 units, 50 cars. And yeah, that's a higher ratio than we would do for a supportive housing building. But from the standpoint of an architect drawing plans to give us flexibility, that's how it's shown currently. Anything of that nature that would have to have a site plan approved and get a building permit and come through various community organizations such as yourselves. Those would be discussions and determinations we'd make at that, further down the line at that point. And definitely not something we're deciding right now.
Thank you, Chris. You just made my point. Again, as I opened, we're talking about rezoning. If and when Rocky Mountain Communities is ready to redevelop Townview, they would come back to you with a redevelopment plan. Here, I think, as Chris explained, that diagram was a massing exercise. There's no, and it hasn't, as far as I know, it hasn't really gone much further. So I'd like to focus our attention on just the rezoning and the potential to rezone these properties to GRX5 and maybe not entertain what the eventual property could look like, more just to say, give it space to be what Rocky Mountain Communities later will present to you when they're ready.
Yeah, I think perhaps to that point, maybe my question was, I know Denver has very strict parking minimums for many of these spaces. And if we're trying to build the most supportive housing, is this the best zoning choice that comes with the least number of required parking spaces through the zoning code, and then leave it up to future development plans to determine for the units that we're building, what's the appropriate number of parking spaces?
The minimum parking requirement for affordable housing is 0.1 space per dwelling unit. That wouldn't change whether it's GRX5, GMU3. I hear your parking concern. We hear it often. And I especially appreciate, given my time in affordable housing myself, I appreciate the point that high parking requirements are inappropriate for affordable housing. But the eventual parking requirement would be the same, whether it's GRX5 or the current GMU3 or anything else.
Fair enough. I guess I'm just used to other rezoning applications.
We have a question here in chat from Stevie. Am I hearing correctly that there will be supportive housing? I'm confused about the difference between affordable and supportive housing was the question.
So what I presented does show supportive housing. That is our plan. Again, it could be something else by the time we come back after the rezoning. But supportive housing is effectively housing for those making 30% of the area median income and below. It is targeted at folks coming out of homelessness. It has a lot of services attached to it. And that's the main difference between that and traditional affordable housing. It is a subset of affordable housing. Affordable housing goes up to 80% AMI. Generally, it's 60% and below, but it does not have the level of services that 30% supportive housing units have. So I'm happy to make that distinction. Again, this is very much a conceptual plan, and I just wanted to give you guys a flavor for what it could be. And by no means do I want to commit Rocky Mountain Communities to a specific type of housing and number of units and parking spaces at this point, because that is not at all where we are in this project, unfortunately. I wish we were about to redevelop it tomorrow, but it'll take a couple of years.
And to that point, I should mention, we expect that the rezoning effort would take about 6 months. So from submitting an application to the city, through going through planning board and hopefully earning their approval, going to the land use, transportation and infrastructure committee of city council, hopefully getting their approval, and then going to the full city council and hopefully getting their approval. So we expect all of that would take about 6 months.
Just quickly back to the parking space question. It's something that I've thought about a lot. Everywhere that I've lived or developed affordable housing, it's always a big question. And I know that my goal, and I know that Rocky Mountain's goal is we don't ever want to develop more parking spaces than we need to. So 0.1 is a great number. very rarely does that satisfy the needs of the community. So we build to the needs of what we see and what we believe the community needs. So it'll look very different at Arroyo Village down the street because there's a large supportive housing component. There's a shelter there and there's affordable housing. And here it would look different because of the mix of potential uses as well. So, and it would look a lot different in Greeley, where we have a property where there is no rural, there isn't any, where as much public transportation and things of that nature. So that's something, again, it's not really pertinent to this conversation at this point, but it is, I'd say it's worth discussing and it's worth understanding and talking about.
How would the redevelopment and its sustainability be funded? Who's going to pay for all of this?
That's a very good question. So traditionally, affordable housing is funded by traditional bank loans, first and foremost. And then this would be, or each various stage of this would likely be low-income housing tax credit projects. So we would apply for tax credits from the Colorado Housing Finance Authority. We would, and for those of you who aren't familiar with tax credits, essentially it's a way to receive cash in exchange for a tax credit against the tax liability of your investor. So a bank will pay Rocky Mountain Communities $5 million for X amount of tax credits, and that will reduce their tax liability. And that funds, that is the biggest and most important piece that funds these projects. There's also, the state has money. They provide up to $50,000 or $40,000 a unit in urban areas. So on a project this size, that can be a substantial amount of money. And other various organizations, Colorado Health Foundation puts money in sometimes. There's a variety of sources, but that is the most challenging piece of affordable housing, and that is my job, and Rocky Mountain's job and our development team's role in this process. So something we're all very familiar with doing, but it's never an easy task. So again, when we come back in a number of years or in a couple of years, it'll be clear what those sources of funding are, and we'll need them in order to make this project successful.
What's the current number of units at that property and what are you proposing to put in there?
It's 100. I'm going to mess up by a unit or two. I think it's 122. And there are going to be over, again, it does depend. The total, the concept that I showed today is just under 500 units. But again, that can change. That's contemplating townhomes or condos, and then contemplating, the density that we are able to get with the rezoning for the other parcels. Very often properties are downsized for whatever reason, but I would say that's probably on the high end of what we'd be looking at.
Well, I did notice that Arroyo Village has been completed for several years now, but the original buildings were of the same vintage as the ones at Townview. And they were having some kind of arthritis in their bones, I think. But we actually stopped by on Sunday to deliver some stuff to the Dolores Project, which has the supportive housing on the 2 floors on the north side. I think it's 12th Avenue, isn't it?
Yeah, 12th and Knox Court.
Yeah, and then right below it is the light rail, so you couldn't be any closer to a transit-oriented and a development.
Yeah, that product is in a great spot for transit, especially for an affordable housing project. It's not very common to see that, even in cities that have very robust train systems. It's not. That's about as close as you can get. So yeah, we're very happy about that project.
And it's right across the street from the reimagined Paco Sanchez Park.
Yeah, yeah, that is nice, very nice now. I remember when it was being built. Yeah, it's definitely changed quite a bit, which is great.
Chris, Jennifer has a question. It's kind of related to my question as well. Jennifer's question was, what about large families, like 6 children? Some of these units have 2 bedrooms. Know of such a case. It sounds like six people living in 2 bedrooms. My question was, in light of the elementary school just down the street from there, Cheltenham, at risk of closing because of under enrollment, is there a potential to have families live in this area? And then also, second or third question, is there ability to bring back the families that are staying there to ensure that they can continue on the site?
Yeah, so the short answer is yes to both of those. We do all of our projects that we're doing now or redeveloping have 3 and 4 bedrooms, or up to 3 and 4 bedrooms. They are geared towards families. Unlike our buildings that are built downtown for millennials or those generations in Rhino, let's say, like those are 1 and 2 bedrooms. There's no need for a 3-bedroom unit really. This is very different. This is for families. These are for kids. This is for people who are 4 to 6 people living in an apartment. So that is something that's part of when we do a market study before we decide what unit mix to put into our buildings, and that generally shows what the demand is, what the current supply is, and helps inform us in our decisions. But I know we're doing a project in Global right now with a partner, and we're also doing a project we're going to be doing a project up in Fort Morgan, and both have a large percentage of 3 and 4 bedrooms, and it's way higher than even we've done in the past, and the reason is to house families. And then in terms of displacement of people coming back, so folks always have the option under the Uniform Relocation Act to come back to that property when it is completed. Unfortunately, it's not always the case. What we see, people choose to move somewhere, have to move somewhere, and they choose not to come back. Many do. They always have the option to, and that is part of our plan, and that's part of our relocation, or what will be part of our relocation plan. And we work with those families. We keep in contact with them. We let them know about the timing of the property coming back, and we have a property management group as well that would know those families from living the last few years there, and we'll work with them through the process. So we would love to have everyone come back. Our goal is to house as many people as possible and to keep housing those that we already do house. But like I said, unfortunately, we can't make decisions for other people, and if they choose to go elsewhere, that is their prerogative. But we do give them the opportunity and hope that they do come back to the property.
Great, thank you.
Well, I really want to thank you guys for this presentation. You did send, I think, you wanted a support letter or something.
That's right. I made a small change to it, so I'll resend it to you, Tom. But the ask would be to submit a support letter that we can attach to the rezoning application, so that when we go in front of Planning Board, Ludi, City Council, we can demonstrate that we have your support.
Okay, so generally what we do is do a straw poll of the people online and in the room here. So Alan, can you set that up for us?
Yeah, I will launch the straw poll here for everybody online. So for those of you in the room, if you could raise your hands right now if you're supportive of this, that way Tom and
I will count. Raise your hand if you're in support of the change of zoning. 2, 3. That's not very. How many we got 3 here, and
any opposed in the room, Tom?
Yeah, one opposed, and I guess the rest are
I don't know if I can vote. I don't live in this district. I live in Wheat Ridge, so,
Oh.
but I don't think this is very well planned.
I'll just say that I don't like the fact that we need to pass a zoning change before we have any idea what's gonna go in there. And it has nothing to do with really you guys in particular, it just has to do with the process. So I'm kind of voting no, just because I think this is a flawed process that we're supposed to send an opinion on proposed zoning change for an area that could, 4 times the amount of people could live there, but we don't know what it's gonna look like. So that's why I'm voting no. So.
Great. So anyone that's here, thanks for sharing your thoughts, Keith. Anyone online, go ahead and vote. I'll give you another 10 seconds here. Then I'm going to close the poll on this end of things. And it doesn't look like we have anybody on the phone right now that we need to account for. So if there is, and I missed that, feel welcome to chime in, but I'll end the poll. I'm going to go ahead here. Of course, my computer is locking up now, but yeah, here we go. The online poll results, we had 5 of 6 for, and I would actually, I can't vote since I'm the Zoom host, but I would be in favor as well. So that would be 6 people yes, and 1 person no from online.
And I realize why there's a lot of non-hand raising here. They're presenters. And so, as I thought, well, wait a minute. Okay. So thank you very much. And we'll get back to you. Well, you'll send me something, right?
I'm gonna send you a revised letter right now. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, everybody. Very nice to present to you tonight. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks everybody for coming out tonight, and thanks Tom for hosting us.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Alan, if you could throw on slide 11. There you go. Our next speaker is Andre Couvillon with Real Architecture on the remodeling and redevelopment of Lake Steam Bass at Colfax and Lowell.
Is Phil gonna get to speak?
He's right after that.
Okay, all right. Okay, you told me. That's why.
Hey everybody! Thank you, Tom, for introducing me, and thank you for pronouncing my name right. That's very kind of you. My name's Andre Couvillon. I'm with Real Architecture. We work quite a bit around the Sloan's Lake area. We actually presented to you guys maybe about a month or 2 ago on a duplex at 21st and Irving, and have moved that forward and are going through the historic district process. I am here about another project with some history behind it. We are currently working with the owners of Lake Steam Baths on a potential redevelopment. The owners, I'm not sure if Scott and Tyler are here. They were going to try to make it, but the timing wasn't great. But they have been frequenters of the Lake Steam Baths for over 15 years. They bought it a couple of years ago and are continuing to run it and have a real love for the place. Unfortunately, as any of you can imagine, and I don't know how many people have actually been in there before, 100 years of a building filled with steam and water and leaking pipes has left the building really kind of fallen apart. And so we're kind of in the early stages of looking at a potential redevelopment with the owners and have done some kind of preliminary work on it. We have reached out to Historic Denver, to their organization to look at putting some sort of preservation agreement together so that we can preserve the front facade of the building and the sign, and potentially preserve the use as a steam bath, but to redevelop the site from there. We haven't gotten very far in the process, just kind of some ideas. But in working with Historic Denver and in working towards having some sort of preservation agreement, a couple of things have come up. First of all, we wanted to make sure we were reaching out to the various RNOs in the area, certainly Sloan's Lake Citizens Group. We're going to be speaking with the West Colfax Association neighbors as well as the BID, just kind of proposing what we're kind of thinking. And the second thing, kind of more importantly, being that if we want to preserve the facade of the building, it currently doesn't meet any of the zoning requirements for transparency in terms of like the amount of windows you need in the UMS 5 zone district, which is what it's zoned. So we would be, one of the things in a very long process would be that we would need to go to zoning and get a variance with support from the neighborhood, allowing for an exception to this transparency. Especially if we're looking to keep it as a steam bath, having a bunch of windows on the first floor is maybe not a great idea. So, and the building has some character. It's certainly is a piece of the neighborhood and is is an important piece of history. So, figuring out how we can take some of the historic pieces, the use, the facade, and kind of bring the rest of it into a more usable and functional component is kind of what we're here to begin the discussion of. I am the historic district and preservation guy on our team. Both David Burton and Kendall Goodman are also here. They're on the architecture team, and they are here to answer. Any of the three of us are happy to answer any questions and to talk a little bit more about the project. But really, what we're here to do is to kind of start the presentation of the idea and to really, to talk about the support of the Sloan's Lake Citizens Group and preserving that facade and getting, and as we go towards, getting a variance for the transparency that would be required. Dave,
And,
Kendall, I don't know if I missed anything, but.
I'll just jump in again. Dave Burton from Real Architecture. And again, we are zoned UMS 5, so we're not looking for any kind of height or setback variances or anything other than what we would need to preserve the facade on the building. We actually have I think we sent a massing model, is that right, guys? Or we can present a massing model and some preliminary floor plans. We have not submitted to the city yet. Again, we've had some discussions, 3 or 4 discussions with Historic Denver. And as Andre said, the developers who bought the building are frequenters of lake steam baths. So we're actually going to keep a steam bath about the current size that it is right now. And part of our redevelopment is to add a hotel to the property. So I don't know if I can share my screen. Is that possible, guys?
Yeah, go ahead. Feel welcome to.
Let me just see if I can do this. Here we go. Maybe. Can you guys see my screen now?
Looks great.
Okay, cool. So the property is on Lowell and Colfax, and it abuts an alley to the east. We are proposing to basically keep where this yellow line is around the perimeter of the existing building as the historic facade, and that encompasses most of the historic facade. And then basically enter as a small parking garage from the back, have a new handicap ramp that'll get up to the spa and the hotel entry. I don't know if you guys have noticed that finished floor is about 3 feet, 2.5 feet above the ground. So it's pretty high up. And in order to keep the existing height that we have and keep the existing basement height that we have, we're going to keep the finished floor essentially where it is and ramp up to it to give it handicapped access. We have a spa entrance and a hotel lobby entrance. And the spa and the hotel would be run, I'm not sure if they're going to run separately or together, but we do have an interior link between them. We do have a ramp down on the south side of the property that ramps down into a basement parking garage. I'm going to jump down. So we have a total of 35 parking spaces, 25 in the lower level and 10 on the main level. Sorry, I'm just spinning a little bit here. And then on the second floor, we have the beginning of hotel rooms. They're stepped back from the facade on all sides. On the second floor also, we have a community room, fitness room, yoga room, and an outside pool deck. So that'll be on the second floor. Stepping up to the third, fourth, and fifth floor, we would have just hotel rooms. And we're not proposing a roof deck, just really the second floor pool deck area would act as a roof deck. We have a quick massing model. And so there's two views. Here's the existing facade of the building. And here's what we're proposing in a massing format to kind of step back from the main facade and from the street. Again, nothing about the new portion of the building would be out of compliance with zoning. The only thing that would be out of compliance is the existing facade, the transparency requirement of the existing facade. There's a building that's being renovated, or I shouldn't say renovated, but basically a similar technique is happening on a building on Tennyson Street right now, where they're holding the existing facade in place, and they have an agreement with Historic Denver as well. There was a sign on that building, and unfortunately they didn't take the sign down, and the sign actually broke some of the facade and pulled the facade down. So our intent would be to remove the sign and refurbish the sign and basically keep, a new version of the old Lake Steambath, so a renovated version of the Lake Steambath sign. So that's our preliminary massing design. And as Andre stated, really, we are looking for we're going to need to get a variance in order to keep that existing facade, and working with Historic Denver. We'll basically have an agreement in place for preservation of the facade and the signage. It's unique that I don't think we're going to put in the agreement that we're going to always keep this a steam bath, but that's how we're designing this building from ground up as a steam bath with all the proper equipment and uses. So that's our presentation for today.
Are there any questions? I know that transparency thing is a problem when they were building the Alamo Draft House Theater to have windows in a theater building. But they ended up putting the barfly bar in the front, and their kitchens, they ended up with opaquing the glass in the kitchen area.
I think we'll end up having to opaque the glass here, because I don't know if you guys have been to Lake Steam Bath, but it is a clothing optional steam bath. So
Right.
would probably be a good thing.
You mentioned a building on Tennyson
Yeah,
doing the same thing. Where exactly? I'd like to see.
Andre, we drove by it today. Where was that at? 40th?
Yeah, it's either at 40th or 41st. It's just south of the park, on the corner. It was the old like trinket shop, with a couple of like 45-degree angles on the facade. I did take a
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we're talking about that green
Yeah.
furniture, right?
Yeah.
Got it.
The one
I haven't been there
had
for
a
a while.
fire.
Check it out.
Yeah, they basically held the facade in place, but they left the sign up, and that sign actually came crashing down onto the sidewalk, which was kind of a problem. So it's our intent to probably remove the sign and refurbish the sign, and then put the sign up when complete.
I would just say the only other hotel or motel we have in our neighborhood right now has a Google rating of 2.7 stars out of 5. So a new accommodation for relatives visiting from out of town would be very welcome for me personally.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be more than 2.5. We'll go for 3 or 4. So yeah, at some point in time, once we submit a concept plan, the comment's going to come back that we don't meet transparency, and so we're going to immediately apply for a zoning permit, which we will not get, but that denial will let us go to the Board of Adjustment for a variance. So I'm guessing that if we submit this here in the next week or two, we will see the Board of Adjustment sometime in, August or September at best. I would imagine that this is going to take, yeah, there it is. There we go.
Of course. Like restaurants.
I'd imagine this is going to take, a couple of years to get a permit as well. And this would be financed privately, no public funding like we talked about in the last project. And I don't know that they have any flag for the hotel currently, so we'll see how that goes as the project moves forward a little bit further.
Name. Yeah. Oh.
Anyone been to Lake Steam Baths ever?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm glad you answered the question. I was wondering how old it was, and you said 100 years exactly, or?
No, it's a little less than that. What was it?
Oh, really?
29 or 3200? Do you remember?
Well, that was about the transition when they went from lime mortar to Portland cement mortar. So you might have some problems with water and the old lime mortars on those brick.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think 2029, I believe, is the correct year, but I'm not 100% on that. But yeah, it was originally I can't remember. It was originally a Jewish steam bath and then became Russian, I believe.
Yeah.
I don't remember what it was called that.
And they have areas that used to be used for the ritual cleansing of
Absolutely.
women during that time of month.
We have a comment here from Pete in the chat saying the more hotels like this we have in the neighborhood, the less profitable and fewer Airbnbs we will see in the neighborhood. Also have a comment from Stevie saying the folks who ran it were wonderful and quite characters particularly.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
know.
the current
Sorry, go ahead.
the current owners actually had a great fondness for the previous owners, and I believe are still kind of in touch with them.
They also mentioned that they want to try to keep all the staff that's there because the staff's been around for a long time. So, yeah, I mean, all of the facilities there are extremely dated.
I think we have a Jennifer, do you have a question?
Yeah, I do. Is there still one I have to be? I know that the idea like steam baths originally is to get rid of. Is there any going out that
Jennifer, I'm
so
so
that you
sorry.
able
We're
that
able to hear about one about every 4 words that you're saying right now.
Maybe you could throw it in the chat.
computer? I
And
lost my. Get rid of
Um,
the that.
we're
So
running
it's
a little
more
bit
accurate.
behind time now, and I want to thank you guys from Real Architecture. You're kind of a neighborhood, aren't your offices up on Spear?
Yeah, for 25 years now.
Yeah. So anyway, thank you very much, and keep coming back to us with all the new stuff we're going in our neighborhood.
And just to honor Jennifer's question, would one of you all mind dropping your email in the chat so she might be able to ask it that way, since it doesn't look like her connection's working well.
Sure, I'm happy to. Thank you for having us, Tom and Alan and Deb. We'll talk to you guys again soon, I'm sure.
Thank you. Sounds nice.
Okay, the next order of business is finally for you guys, I'm sorry. DA Phil Bassiano. Marciano with the Denver District Attorney's Office. And if you want to come right over here and be center stage.
Can everyone in here get a handout?
Oh, sure, yeah.
If you sign our email, that would be, so if you want to sign up for an email. Right, that would be great.
All right. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Philip Bassiano. I am a deputy district attorney in the Denver District Attorney's Office. We just wanted to have the opportunity to come and address you all this evening briefly about just some of the developments in our office recently and address with you some new legislation that's hopefully going to be going into effect soon and how that might impact some things you're seeing that are coming out of our office. Very, very briefly, I have been in the office for over 5 years. I am a deputy who's assigned to our family violence unit, so I prosecute exclusively felony domestic violence, child abuse, child sexual abuse cases. But I also have a homicide docket and work in our traffic team. So I work on a number of cases involving vehicular assaults and vehicular homicides and hit and runs and things of that nature. I am a resident of Villa Park, so just a neighbor to the south. So I'm very familiar with this neighborhood. My wife and I frequent Alamo Draft House very often, and Sloan's Lake as well. So this is a neighborhood I've spent many hours in. So I want to be fairly brief this evening and highlight about 3 different things that are kind of on the docket, as we say in our office. First, I want to encourage everyone to take the time to go to our main website, denverda.org. On that website, you'll have access to our data dashboard. So within the last 2 years, I want to say, so kind of at the height of the pandemic, one of the things that we spent some time on, since we weren't as often in trial, was rolling out a data dashboard to be more transparent with the community about the cases that we are prosecuting, the cases we are not prosecuting, how those cases are moving through the system, and the results of those cases. And it breaks it down by not only case type, but also with demographic information as well. So this is a good tool if you're interested to kind of see crime statistics from our point of view in terms of case filings and results and resolutions of those cases. This was an initiative that was pioneered by our office along with a few other Front Range offices. And in the last few years, it has now grown to include 13 different districts in the state, as everyone across the state is trying to be, for the most part, more and more transparent with the criminal justice process once it gets to the level that we're working at. Our office is exclusively state crimes. So just to kind of put that in perspective, we don't prosecute municipal violations. So trespasses and things of that nature to properties are not typically something our office is handling. We're handling misdemeanor and felony level state offenses, not local ordinance violations and things of that nature. That's done by the city attorney's office in Denver. Moving up from the data dashboard, my understanding is that the last time we presented to this organization or this group, one of the big topics was a discussion of our handgun intervention program for specifically juvenile offenders. We are right now, along with the rest of the country, Denver is feeling the pangs of a rise in handgun violence, especially amongst juveniles. I think the last 3 years, there's been a consistent rise in juvenile handgun offenses, in particular homicides, and it is a challenge that we have been trying to tackle from all different angles. The handgun intervention program was put into place a few years back, and it is a program designed to not focus on punitive measures for juveniles who are found in possession of handguns, but focus more on education and future crime prevention. That's not to say if that handgun is being used for more than just possessing, we're not prosecuting those cases. We very much are prosecuting those cases where juveniles then not only are in possession of the handgun, but are brandishing it and discharging it and using it in violent crimes. But we're hopeful that with the handgun intervention program, we're going to be able to stem some of those offenses from happening by getting the juveniles into the program to teach them the dangers of handgun use and the like. One of the things that's recently come into focus with new legislation that's just been, I think, passed through the House was the State House was raising the age of purchase for handguns from 18 to 21, and then also expanding the red flag law to now include district attorneys and prosecutors. So we were in support of both of those, that legislation, not because we want more power, but because frankly, a lot of what we deal with are cases where we're dealing with individuals who have significant mental health issues or in the throes of significant mental health crises. And now we have the tools. Well, once this becomes official, we'll be able to have the tools to at least put the moratorium on their ability to access handguns and frankly, all firearms. So the expansion of the red flag law was something our office supported. And we're very optimistic once that finally gets the seal of approval, we'll be able to start instituting that. Because part of what we do is we use that a similar program with our domestic violence cases. There is legislation, there are laws that allow us to, when anyone is charged with a crime of domestic violence, immediately work to remove any firearms from that person's possession by virtue of the fact that domestic violence cases tend to result in more fatalities than other cases. So those are some recent firearms developments that we're very excited about. Obviously, we believe there's always more work that can be done in that area. And it feels like we're sometimes trying to bail out a flood with a shovel, but we're doing the best we can. We're excited for what's to come with that. The other thing I wanted to highlight tonight, and then I'll open up to any questions, because this was talked about earlier too, is the rise in motor vehicle thefts. Obviously, as the statistics were shown earlier, thankfully the Sloan's Lake part of the neighborhood has shown a small dip in that, but West Colfax has shown a persistent continuance of that. Motor vehicle thefts remain one of the most frustrating offenses for not only people who are victims of them, but also for prosecutors to pursue. The way the legislation exists, we have to show that someone who's found in a stolen vehicle knowingly possessed that vehicle and knew it was stolen. So if someone is just sleeping in a car, and that alone is not going to give us enough to be able to charge that person. We need more to be able to show that someone who's found in a stolen vehicle is actually culpable for being in possession of that stolen vehicle. And the way the legislation is written, which is the most frustrating part, is whether or not that offense is a felony versus a misdemeanor, or the level of felony versus the misdemeanor is actually based solely on the value of the vehicle, which is offensive in many ways, because a lot of people who are the victims of these crimes are not people who own Teslas, because those have built-in security features. They're people who own, 2004 Hyundais that frankly the resale value of is not very substantial, but is their lifeline, because this is a commuter city. We don't have great public transportation. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. And so you need vehicles. So there is now legislation that is before the legislature to change the law so that motor vehicle theft is a felony regardless of value of the vehicle. I want to emphasize that this is not designed for us to use this to punish people greater, because obviously the punishment for a felony is greater than the punishment for a misdemeanor. But it's used it'll be used as a greater deterrent for people to continue to engage in this type of behavior. Because as it stands written now, sometimes you have to be twice convicted of this same offense before we can even charge you with a felony. It's just very antiquated, to say the least. Ultimately, though, the issue of motor vehicle thefts does not necessarily just stem to the fact that people want other people's cars. We know people are stealing vehicles for other reasons. Chiefly, they're stealing vehicles to support drug habits. They're stealing vehicles for a place to live. Sometimes they're stealing vehicles just for a place to do drugs. But with the change in legislation, this will give us a little bit more to work with in terms of not having to rely solely on the vehicle being a newer model or a vehicle that maintains its value to have actual teeth to the prosecution. And just the fact that the vehicle is stolen and they're in possession of it will be what we need to hopefully see some changes. Again, this is an issue that's going to be requiring a holistic approach, just like everything else. And once this legislation is passed, which we hope it will be, and all signs point that it will be, we'll take steps to try and implement it in the most effective way possible. Understanding it's not our goal to use it to incarcerate people. That's not the intent of our support for this. So those are a few of the new developments in our office. I think from the last time we had somebody come and speak with you all. So in the interest of time, I'll take any questions people have. And I know there's more to share. So you always are welcome to reach out to our office by email or by phone, and we can put you in touch with someone who can answer your question. This is our sign up for our newsletter. So our newsletter is, I think it's monthly, Mary?
The fraud.
The fraud newsletter is monthly. Okay, so the fraud newsletter is monthly, and the fraud newsletter is very helpful because it's going to help kind of identify some of the newest trends and people trying to take your money by offering you things that aren't real. So something to keep in mind if you'd be interested in that. But then it also will sign you up for our quarterly newsletter, which will have more information about what's happened over the last few months. So I'll open it up to questions. Yes, go ahead.
Did Austin and Lyle go through your handgun program that you were talking about?
It's a good question. I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head.
Who is that? He was the East High School shooter.
Yes.
So it seems to me that what I heard anyway, and this could have been a BPS issue and DA issue, is that he went through he was caught with a handgun.
Yes.
And, you know, went through some kind of process, and then he was going through some kind of a random pat down where he would go to school and get randomly patted down to see if he had a gun, because he was on a gun program. And I just don't know if that's what you're kind of suggesting with the handgun issue with juveniles, where if they are, you know, caught with a handgun, the severity of what happens, or they're allowed to kind of go back out and potentially get caught with a handgun again and shoot some people.
So I don't know the answer to the question if he went through the handgun intervention program. I will say in response to that, though, a few things come to mind with that situation. Not to get political, and with the DPS and putting school resource officers in schools and whatnot, that's still an ongoing conversation. There actually was a report I think just came out a few weeks ago where they polled, I think, teenagers in Denver from, I think, some DPS schools. And the report came back, and this is, you know, very telling, that 1 out of every 4 teenagers reported that they can get access to a loaded unregistered firearm within 24 hours if they want to. You know, that is a terrifying reality that we're living in, because what we're dealing with is not just the access, it's the tracing of the firearms that they're actually getting in a hold of. Want to look into this. There's a trend called ghost guns, which is the newest thing where people can take a firearm They can jerry-rig the firearm. They can make it an automatic if it's a semi-automatic. They can buy all of this stuff online and it's then untraceable. And I don't know enough about his situation to say how he came into possession of a firearm. I do believe he was under a sort of supervision program that was what subjected him to this pat down. And I'm not sure if that program was through DPS or an alternative. With juveniles in possession of handguns as it stands currently, the level of punishment for such an offense is incredibly minor. It is because they're still juveniles. So the way the juvenile code is drafted, it is very much drafted to prioritize no long-term consequences to not disrupt that individual's life. And so if someone is merely in possession of a firearm and it has not been utilized, the punishment is extremely mitigated. I don't know enough to say what his prior situation was. I know that very much is a massive topic of conversation in many offices at the moment. But long story short, it is one of the many challenges of juvenile access to handguns that we're dealing with, frankly, access to handguns. I shouldn't just say juvenile access, I should say access to handguns that we're finding. And up until about 2-3 years ago, we didn't even have a handgun court. We didn't even have a handgun program in Denver. So this is this is part of our efforts to just try and do more and hope that maybe those efforts, make some change. Are there any other questions? I'm not operating the chat, so I don't want to scroll it down inadvertently.
No questions in the chat right now. Thanks for asking.
Well, thank you all so much. Please sign up for the newsletter and reach out to our office if you ever have any questions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bill, yes.
Anybody else want to sign up here?
I'm so glad I'm not teaching anymore.
Thank you.
I'll bet. Thank you.
Wonder why they're leaving.
Thank you all. Take care.
Yeah, we're over.
A few months ago, we had a preliminary report on a rezoning at Colfax and Knox, 1497 Knox. And it's currently meant to have the pictures, but it's a row of townhouses that were built in around late 60s, early 70s. I mean, it's got the faux mansard roof. They're just 2 stories. The units on the end are single story. And they are planning, yes, that's exactly the picture I wanted. And they are, once again, just like the town view, they're aging, but the property, if Alan could go to the shot from above, it's got a whole lot of unused space in the back.
Oh, sorry.
And what they're planning on doing is taking those down. They want to change the zoning. And what they're proposing to put in there is a 4-story building with the upper story setbacks on the south and west side. So the massing is pulled back from adjacent single family homes, and the bulk of the building is adjacent to Colfax. There will be 66 units, all 100% affordable, those making up to 50% of the area median income. We have 47 parking spaces and a garage. They will have on the ground floor 2,000 square foot office that will be leased to Girls Inc., which is adjacent. There's a whole bunch of Girls Inc. I think it's to the right there. Yeah, so they'll be leasing some of the space, and the next building with the same color roof that across the Julian is another Girls Inc. building. And then they'll have about 3,200 square foot amenity area on the first floor for residents facing Colfax. The amenity program is TBD, but we just wanted to give an update on what's going on there. In a month or two, when they get some plans going, the Shopworks Architecture will make a presentation to us on it. But it's once again going to just pretty much like Townview. It's the buildings are old and they want to provide a lot more housing, affordable housing, which we are desperately in need of in Denver. Okay, 1085. Yeah, they want to change the zoning from GRH3, which is row house, to G, which is general, MS5, and the zoning along Colfax is MS5, and that means Main Street limits to 5 stories. And that's the same zoning that they have at the Lake Bass, Steam Bass, which is an existing zoning. And along there, if you get closer to Sheridan, it goes to MS8, which 8 stories is allowable. So it's really, they want to tag the, the stuff clear back on their property from what's zoned right along Colfax so they can work on that. If you could, okay, this one, this is slides 12, 13, and 14, and it's 3401 West 29th and 2945 Julian, and they want to change the requesting zoning there. It's 2 old churches, Highland Park Presbyterian Church, and the original building is the one right on 29th, and the one which I don't know why the picture is so shady or grainy, but it was a later building, and it's no longer being used as a church, and they currently use the north building, which is totally separate. The alley goes between them as an event center. But let's see. That's not the one. I don't know what zone they want to do. If you can see how it was a much more contemporary building, but a lot of the main small churches in North Denver just don't have enough members to keep going. A test, we're in Merritt United Methodist Church, and it ceased functioning as a church about 4 or 5 years ago. However, in the sanctuary part, they do rent the church out, the main sanctuary, on Sundays to 2 different congregations, one early and one late, which of course helps pay the bills here.
So they want to leave the church building, whoever's doing.
Yeah, they currently, they sit like on a residential zone. And so these other uses aren't permitted within a residential zone. That's why the Merritt Church here was in a residential zone, like an old R2, and use by right is a church. But when they converted it to the co-work, we needed to go through with the owner and get rezoning allowing
And
what we're in.
is the topic of discussion the older church or the newer
Both,
building?
both.
Oh,
Both.
And it's like someone newly bought it? Is
Yes.
that safe to say?
Yeah.
Cool.
Doesn't it have something to do with after school?
Well, yeah, AJ has a child in the after-school program in that building, and They
have to have the proper zoning.
Yeah,
It has something to do with that.
That makes sense.
so when it was a Sunday school, only on Sundays, it was fine. So, maybe you could jump then, we're running out of time here, but jump to slide number 15, Alan. Okay, this is the Colfax Marathon is gonna be Sunday, May 21st. And that's when they run through the neighborhood and they run along Colfax and they go up Raleigh and right around the lake and then back onto Colfax, which is something we've been pushing for a lot because sometimes they'll run their races and trap, like we are trapped in there and can't get out on a Sunday morning until there's a break in the thing. So maybe they were listening or maybe they heard the karma of us being PO'd. But anyway, this is really good for the people that live in the neighborhood around the park. And it's full, let's see, it's 26 point something mile. And 26.2 mile. And this area is called section 2 and that. And they said section 2 is nice and easy on you because around the lake, it's pretty flat.
It is. That's wonderful.
So the next presentation is Deb Neely for Denver Urban Gardens.
Okay, so the deal here is we had reached out to Doug and somebody from Doug was supposed to come present and they couldn't make it. So basically, this is just some really quick and dirty information at this hour on how to access Doug Gardens and how to find out where they are. If you get on doug.org, D-U-G, that's Denver Urban Gardens. There's 190 in community and school-based gardens across 6 counties in Metro Denver. The plot sizes are about 10 by 15. And if you're interested in growing food in one of the plots, you would first identify a garden that works for you by looking at the map. So if you go to Gardens, Alan, thank you for doing this, by the way. The Gardens tab up there. Yeah, there you go. That shows all the different gardens, so they're everywhere. And it shows the status. So green, there's availability. And the blue, I believe they're full.
It's the red.
Let's see, some are not open to the public, they're private gardens, and some are currently under construction, which is the black leaf. So that's an easy way to look at your neighborhood, to zoom in on your neighborhood, find out what gardens are around. And then you can click on the leaves to give you the garden information. And you can email dirt@doug.org and they'll give you the contact information for that garden's leader. And the garden leaders take your applications. And the fee is usually, it averages around $35 a year. But plot fees can be waived for those who are unable to pay. To assist gardeners, Doug operates the Grow a Garden for low to moderate income residents. Doug's Grow a Garden program connects individuals and community groups with seeds, seedlings, and education to get growing at home or in a Doug garden. So essentially, anything you really want to know is on this website. Very comprehensive. And that's all I really have on that.
Just to be clear, for those interested, Cheltenham and Brown Elementary, and then there's one at West Colfax Urban Garden are the ones open in our neighborhood.
Yeah, Brownfield. Yeah, that's right.
And there's one over by the parking structure by Alamo Draft House.
That's right. I don't think that's a Doug garden. That's not a.
It's community.
Correct. That is not on the map.
Right. The other thing is Denver Digs Trees. Going to be at Sloan's Lake Park on the 22nd of April. So you can pick up trees if you order them. Almost knows more.
Yeah, it's, they'll,
Oh, they're selling extra ones too.
well, yeah, if you signed up for them ahead of time, you can pick your trees up there. But then, they will have some for sale at that point. And I'm not sure where, it'll be up by the boathouse, but I don't know.
Yeah, that'd be good to know.
Okay. When I find out, we'll throw it out there too on our website. And just, we will deal with this later, but there's a new liquor license application for the AM PM gas and convenience at 2105 Federal, which it's been a gas station with a small convenience store for a really long time. And I think they just want to get in on the profits one can make by selling beer. And now that they don't have to do the 3-2 beer, it's the full strength, and we'll find out more about it. The hearing is a ways away, so. And then if you could jump to slide 16, Alan. Yep, and this is, we'll post this on our website too, but Kias and Hyundais are very, very easy to steal. People have said that all you need is a short USB to USB cable, and you can plug it in and get the car going. So if you have a fob, key fob door opener and starter, you can go to these different websites and you can figure out how to adjust the programming on your car so that you can bypass that shortcut that thieves are using. And those are the two most stolen cars in Denver, in Colorado, and pretty much across the country for that reason. And slide number 17. And for people who, they have this place called Service Station Book Give, which is 4890 Lowell Boulevard. And if you have books to donate, you can take your books there and they will find a new home for them. You can pick up new books if you have like one of those little libraries on the street in your block. You can get books for that. And they're open for donations 10 to 1 on Tuesdays. And it's an old gas station up there on Lowell. And I know some of the volunteers and they just love to find a new home for books. And that's it. Our next meeting is Wednesday, May 10th. Thank you all for coming, and I think a few people have wandered off. Thank you very much. And thank you, Alan, for being the host.
You think?
Good night, everybody.
Night, thanks.